Hi, Roger.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi. So firstly, if we could just discuss your love of open source software. I guess you've always been taken by it. You employed a strategy at the New York Stock Exchange to drive through open source. I was wondering why then and there. I mean, that was quite an early adoption for such a major organisation.
Yes, I mean, the thing that drew us to open source in my previous role at the New York Stock Exchange was initially just that we had to innovate very rapidly. We were facing a lot of competition from totally electronic venues, and part of my role was to introduce electronic trading. And in doing that, we needed a lot of new technology capabilities. We really found that the open source model allowed us to move more quickly. We could innovate more quickly, and that met our business objective, which was to introduce electronic trading more quickly. But then something happened, which was that as we introduced electronic trading, the volume of trading just exploded. Because what happened in the trading world was that it used to be that human beings would trade with each other, they'd talk on the phone, they'd use a keyboard to send orders in, cancel orders, so on. And as you introduced totally electronic trading, the industry changed and people started using software programs to trade with each other, so-called algorithmic trading. And the volume of messages that were being sent into the exchange just exploded. And we found that we needed to really reduce our costs because otherwise the compute capacity to handle all the messages would put us out of business. And so we found that by using open source and also open standards, we could lower our costs. We could introduce real competition where perhaps there wasn't enough competition among our providers, among our vendors. And so although we started very much focused on innovation, we also came to get a lot of value out of open source by driving down our costs through competition and the use of open source.
So what, a bit more on the benefit side, so what else did you see? You mentioned costs briefly. How much are we speaking here in terms of costs?
So we found that we could cut costs. It varied a little bit from place to place, but we could cut costs by 50% in many cases by using open source and open standards, and that was very important to the business.
Okay, and how much research did you do beforehand? Was this something why, so you've explained the move, but what did you look at? What kind of best practice did you see?
We started 8 years ago, this was, and the first thing we were looking at was an operating system to drive all the screens you see down on the trading floors, about 5,000 big screens that people look at for prices and news. And we looked at Linux, and we found that Linux, we could customize it to meet our needs because it was open source. And we could also get good support from our vendors. And so we did all the kind of research you'd expect from any new product, right? I mean, you still need to do your research even if it's something that's open source. The good news, though, is that when you do your research, you can easily try it out and you can get much more good information about it by looking at the community behind the product. So one of the things about open source is all the feedback from users is out in the open for everyone to see. So you don't have to rely on the word of some salesperson who's going to always tell you what you want to hear. You can actually go and interact directly with the other users, and you can validate that what you think is there really is there.
Yeah. Okay, so why the move then to an open source, why the move from a CIO of the New York Stock Exchange to chief executive of an open source firm?
It's a good question. I had spent 6 years as CIO at the New York Stock Exchange, and I had achieved what I set out to do, which was introduce an all-electronic system, we call it the hybrid market in the United States. And so I was trying to work out whether I would do another CIO role or whether to do something different. And I was approached about this role at Ingres, and what was exciting to me was the opportunity to take what I really think is a better business model. The open source model is so much better for customers and so much better for the industry, and to bring it into the enterprise database world. Up until Ingres came out as open source, there really wasn't a choice for people who wanted an alternative to, let's say, the Oracle database or the Sybase database. There really wasn't an enterprise class open source choice. And so I thought this was a very exciting opportunity to go and build something. And I was also very pleased that the funders for the company wanted to have a customer in charge. And I always think that one of the nice things about open source is it puts the customer back in charge. You're not locked in to a particular vendor. So I thought it was kind of appropriate but good that the funders for Optimark wanted to have an ex-CIO, an ex-customer, as the head of the company. And so I was very excited about joining the company.
How much choice did they have from other people of your standing? Probably not many at that point.
I suspect it was quite a good choice because it's a very exciting opportunity. I think it's a very unique situation to have Ingres, whose technology has 30 years of investment behind it, launched as an open source company, so that you get all the benefits of 30 years of innovation, but you also get the full benefits of the open source model. No license fee, right? No lock-in, great support organization, and all the innovation that comes from an open source model. As I think you'll see, Ingres has been actually innovating more quickly than the established players, even though we're a much smaller company.
Okay, so you've mentioned the established players, and you've mentioned that's one of the reasons you wanted to get involved, was because you saw there was no real competitor to Oracle in the market, and you have kind of flung yourself into managing an organisation that is competing with one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and I was just wondering kind of how you were dealing with this. Especially now Sun is being bought by Oracle, and that's kind of the other major player out the market. So you're kind of there, and just wondering, what you saw, what kind of kept you awake at night in this area.
Well, I mean, clearly it's always a bit of a David and Goliath situation when you have a new company like Ingres providing an alternative in a space where there hasn't really been too much in the way of alternatives. It's been almost like a monopoly situation in the proprietary database world. And so you always do wonder, what are those big players going to do? It doesn't keep me up awake at night, though. I mean, I sleep well, for a start. And more fundamentally, I think customers are really had it with this proprietary model. They're sick of the business practices. They're sick about basically having a gun put to their head, and being required to buy more licenses even when they don't need them. And so they really are demanding a better business model. And so I think that's fundamentally what allows me to sleep at night, is I know, both as an ex-customer myself and talking to our customers, that they really do want an alternative to the proprietary sort of lock-in kind of model.
How's Ingres been affected by the recession?
Well, we grew over 30% last year which was a recessionary year in the United States. We grew to $68 million in revenue. Just for a data comparison point, when the company was formed, that first year we did 26 million. So in 3 years we've gone from 26 million to 68 million in revenue.
So would you say it's been hit at all by the recession?
No one is immune from this recession. This is the worst recession for 30 years. So we do see projects getting postponed, and some of those projects would otherwise involve Ingres. But we've seen a dramatic increase in interest from people who know that they've got to do more with less. You know that with their IT budget going down, they have a choice. Either they adopt a better way of procuring software using the open source model, or they have to find millions of dollars of savings somewhere else, and often that means laying people off. I mean, my budget was dominated by the salary and benefits costs of people, and if you can't save money on the software side, you're going to have to go probably and lay people off. So I think no one likes to do that. Cutting back on your talent is cutting back on future innovation for the business. It's also just no manager likes to have to lay off people who are good workers and adding a lot to the business. And so I think the recession has really made this choice very stark. Because with budgets going down or at best staying flat, and the business still wanting a lot to compete, the business needs IT to compete. It really has made people start to look at open source who wouldn't otherwise have perhaps questioned the way they were doing things.
Okay.